Welcome to the Mystic Media channel. I am your host, Rabina Rastaban, aka the Realist Astrologer. And tonight I'm going to get into the dark-sided Gemini female. Now, before I get started, I must state my disclaimer. And basically, that is I'm talking about those women that are on the dark side. So I differentiate between two types of people that are on the light side and people that are on the dark. So basically, a dark-sided person is someone who's very disagreeable. They're always causing problems. They're always creating upsets. And no matter how much they disrupt the lives of others, they do not change. And either because they do not wish to change or they can't see that dark-sided traits within them. So let's get started. The dark-sided Gemini female can be flighty, shifty, and restless. She changes with the wind. She can be very inconsistent and unreliable. She's basically mercurial, and that basically means somebody that, changes up very easily. Um, they're very inconsistent, uh, have a lot of frenetic energy. Basically, the definition of mercurial is subject to sudden or unpredictable changes of mood or mind. And if you notice, mercurial, the root word is Mercury, and Mercury rules Gemini. So that makes sense. Mercury is a very high energy sign, but it's mental energy and it's very fast paced. Also, the dark-sided Gemini female can be too talkative. She tends to talk too fast. She'll interrupt you when you are speaking. She tends to have problems listening because she's too busy thinking about what she's going to say next. And a lot of times she just can't shut up. So she's a chatterbox. And a lot of times what she's talking about really has no importance. She just likes to hear herself talk. She could be inattentive, easily distracted, so it goes back to her mercurial nature. She can also be contradictory, argumentative, too opinionated. So she always has an opinion about everything, even if her opinions are way off base. She'll start arguments just to keep her mind active. Gemini is a very mental sign, and it's a sign that constantly needs to be stimulated mentally. So in that vein, they could be argumentative just to keep their mind active. Also, the dark-sided Gemini can be two-faced. And I know a lot of people that are familiar with Gemini, know this about Gemini. And this is even true of the light-sided Geminis, because Gemini consists of two personalities in one. Make no mistake, there are definitely two people, two identities in one person with Gemini, because Gemini is the twins. So often with the dark-sided Gemini female, one personality will be an angel, the other one will be a devil. Or if she's really dark-sided, one will be a lightweight devil and the other one will be a hardcore devil. So in the whole vein of being two-faced, basically the dark-sided Gemini female cannot be trusted. She'll stab you in the back. She'll talk out both sides of her mouth. She tends to be a gossiper, and she'll talk behind your back. And sometimes she'll talk about you while you're there as if you're not even in the room. Also, the dark-sided Gemini will put you on blast. She can also be very insensitive, have no filter when it comes to speaking, will hurl hurtful words at you, and be very insensitive about, how they, come across with what their point of view is. Um, think about the little kid that is in the store and they see a heavyset person and they go right up to them and say, "You're fat." Well, that's a little dark-sided Gemini kid right there. So that gives you an example. So again, no filter. Smart ass mouth, always has a rebuttal. So they always want to have the last word, always got something to say in response, even if it doesn't make any sense. Another dark-sided Gemini female trait is she's always running late, or sometimes she just won't show up at all and she will not give proper notice. And also what goes with their restlessness, they could basically be a ball of nerves. Just, have a bunch of nervous energy. And in that vein, they will have quirky habits. So the dark-sided Gemini female may be a nail biter. She may like tug on her hair a lot, like twirl her hair a lot. She might pluck out her eyelashes as, is like a nervous condition. She might have like little ticks or whatever. She might like to play with string or like objects and, just take things apart because again, she needs to constantly be stimulated. Tying knots. has to touch everything. So we'll be upsetting little things. Like you might have things in order, and here comes the dark sided Gemini female, and she just starts messing around with stuff. Tapping fingers or toes, or tapping your foot, that could be very annoying. Making weird noises. I know one dark-sided Gemini female, whenever she would see like a little kid, she'd be like, "Rah," like that's weird. I don't know why, but anyway, that's an example. Can smack loudly when eating. Also can have these weird darting eye movements. If you saw my video on the dark-sided Gemini males, I call them googly eye bandits, because Gemini has a tendency to like just their eyes will dart from left to right, and like they just have a very short attention span, so a lot of times their eyes will just be moving about. So they can have weird eye movements as well, and have this real stare or this scowl that like really like goes through you. Also, the dark-sided Gemini can be very disagreeable. So I mentioned about the argumentativeness. Um, but when she's bored, again, being that need for mental stimulation, she can be devious. In the most innocent way, she could be kind of disagreeable. But the dark-sided Gemini female can be downright devious just because she's bored, and she will commence to scheming. The term idle mind is the devil's workshop. Yeah, that was written about a dark-sided Gemini, obviously. Or maybe it was a Gemini came up with that title because, again, if Gemini, especially dark-sided Gemini, if they're not stimulated mentally, then a lot of times their mind goes off into left field and into some devious shit. Another dark-sided Gemini female trait is they can tease, taunt, and ridicule you, and they will make you the butt of her she will make you the butt of her jokes. She don't have no problem making fun of you. So if you're dating her, especially if you're in a long-term relationship with her, uh she'll often make fun of you in front of her friends or family, and think that's cute. um a lot of times she can't be serious when it's called for, and sometimes she's too matter of fact. So when you want her to act like she cares, sometimes she's just too nonchalant about it. She can be vulgar, have a potty mouth, and have crude humor. So, she might tell a lot of sex jokes, or she just might be into some real like, potty humor, real lowbrow shit. And if she's ghetto, she'll be downright ratchet. So like the most ratcheted chicks, a lot of them are dark-sided Geminis, because again, like I said, they don't have no filter. They have a lot of this nervous energy. They're off the chain. So yeah, ratchet. The dark-sided Gemini female can also be vindictive. And when vindictive, or when they feel like they've been done wrong, they can get violent. Gemini is a mutable sign, and the mutable signs tend to be prone to extreme violence. So you gotta be careful with the dark-sided Gemini. Now the thing is, you won't be able to tell right off the bat, because they tend to be very easygoing, tend to go with the flow, be very flexible. However, like I said, they have this scheming thing with them, and they can be very vindictive. Just think about Left Eye. She's a Gemini. Not trying to say she's dark-sided. I don't think she was. However, she did have some dark-sided traits, because when she was dating Andre Rison and she found out that he was cheating, and then one day she saw that he had all these brand new sneakers, and she saw that he didn't buy any for her. So she piled all his sneakers up into this bathtub in his home, lit it on fire, and burnt up the whole house. I mean, it's ridiculous. But yeah, so when they get to the point where they get violent, a lot of times they don't have a filter to, tell them, maybe you're going too far. Naomi Campbell is another one. She's a Gemini, and she's been in a few court cases dealing with attacking her personal assistants. I think once she hit with a cell phone. So yeah, they can be violent when they want to be. The dark-sided Gemini female also lies without a conscience. And again, it goes with that dual personality. So one side of them may have one truth, the other side of them might have this other truth, but to you, it's lies. She can be disloyal. So she will cut her friends and family, especially family, off with, for hardly anything. So if she feels that, somebody in her family has done her wrong, she'll just cut them off without no feeling, because Gemini really doesn't have that emotional attachment. So they're also prone to treachery as well, and betrayal. The dark-sided Gemini female sometimes is too masculine. That's why I have my baseball cap on, because Gemini is real good when it comes to sports. And it's because they have that agility and that flexibility. And a lot of Gemini females can throw a mean curveball. So they're really good at like softball and stuff like that. So that's why I put my little sporty hat on. And I have Mars in Gemini. So I can relate to a lot of this energy that I'm talking about. So yeah, I mean, through my Mars and Gemini, I have, some dark side Gemini traits, especially when I was younger. Um, and I could get into that in another video, because like I promised people in this one video I did, I was going to share some of my personal experiences. So yeah, I don't want you to think that I'm sitting here high and mighty, judging people, because everybody has dark sided traits, and I am no exception. So again, with the being too masculine, sometimes they can come across as too aggressive, too bullish, too severe. They tend to like to dominate you mentally, and they like to outwit you. So if they're dealing with a dominant male, a lot of times that male is going to be frustrated because she won't back down. She refuses to back down, and it's because she sees you as an equal. Just because you're a man doesn't mean that, she's going to put you on some pedestal or give you some type of deference. Also, the dark-sided Gemini female can be too cerebral, too logical, and emotionally detached. So I kind of touched on that earlier with being being too matter of fact, being too nonchalant, not being able to be serious when the time is called for, being too in their head and not enough in the heart. So that goes along with that. Also, the dark-sided Gemini female can be very disorganized, can be messy. She could be immature, temperamental, touchy, and easily irritated. Also, she can be unscrupulous, basically lacking principles, ethics, and she can be immoral. She'll basically try anything once, and again, I'm talking about the dark-sided Gemini female. And she can have Machiavellian tactics. It's funny that Tupac was a Gemini. He had that album Machiavelli, because Machiavellian tactics is definitely dark-sided Gemini. So let me just read the definition of Machiavellian, the Machiavellian construct. It's the employment of cunning and duplicity. That's Gemini. In statecraft or in general conduct. The word comes from the Italian Renaissance diplomat and writer Niccolo Machiavelli, who wrote Il Principe, whatever. But it's characterized by a duplicitous interpersonal style, a cynical disregard for morality, and a focus on self-interest and personal gain. Psychologists used to describe a person's tendency to be unemotional, so I mentioned the unemotional, and therefore able to detach him or herself from conventional morality, and hence to deceive and manipulate others. So the whole Machiavellian tactics, that's dark-sided Gemini. And I should have mentioned that with the dark-sided Gemini male too, but that slipped my mind. Also, the dark-sided Gemini female, she could be undisciplined, especially when it comes to work, if she's not into her career. If it's just a regular job, she might slack off on the job. She might quit her job at the drop of a hat if the job is meaningless to her. So it's very important for all Geminis to be in a career that's very meaningful, because it is very easy for them to just quit when they've had enough, or if they get bored. Also, the dark-sided Gemini female, she tends to, if she wears makeup, sometimes the eye makeup is a bit too severe. Like the eyeliner will be extra sharp. Sometimes it'll be like super thick, but a lot of times it's that real pencil thin, but it'll be extra sharp, because they're all about that fierceness in the eyes. And they do have some fierce eyes. That's one of their best traits. They could kill you with their eyes. Scorpio too, but Gemini too. When they do wear eye makeup, a lot of times they like those frosty colors, like that frosty blue color, and sometimes it can be too severe looking. And when it comes to clothes, either the clothes are too tight or too loose. And when she's trying to look sexy or appealing, sometimes she overdoes it and she could be scantily clad, straps always falling down. Actually, a lot of dark-sided Gemini females, they've been strippers before or they're currently strippers. And that deals with their flexibility and their agility. They are a badass on the pole. Like, they could do some crazy pole tricks, I'll tell you that. And that deals with their, like I said, they're very agile, very flexible. And Gemini really doesn't give a fuck when it comes to like what people think about them. So it's easy for a dark-sided Gemini to be in a profession such as stripping, but they'll call it exotic dancing. Um, they're also prone to wardrobe malfunctions. So the messy ones, they can always appear disheveled. When it comes to their hair, a lot of times they have bad dye jobs or bad weaves. A lot of times their hair is damaged from dyeing it too much. They tend to play mind games. They will pull you in, and as soon as you try to get close to them, they'll pull away, or they'll just, just play little games with your mind, make you think that they're going in one direction, but they're really going in another direction. And some of them are just downright cuckoo, crazy, off, a little touched in the head. There's also the airhead type of Gemini. I know a lot of you probably have come in contact with the airhead type of Gemini, but don't let that fool you, because a lot of times they're really smart. Because a lot of Gemini in particular is a very intellectual sign. So a lot of time that Gemini airhead act is an act. It's not really real, and they do that just to get by. And they like to feign ignorance when it comes to situations where they're trying to gain the upper hand. So again, about that little off and touching the head, just think about Angelina Jolie. She's a Gemini, and she has a lot of dark-sided Gemini traits, if you ask me. When she was dating Billy Bob Thornton, she was wearing a necklace that had two vials, and the vials contained her blood and Billy Bob Thornton's blood. So that was kind of weird. So Gemini, they could do some kooky things sometimes. As a parent, the Gemini female can be detached, unaffectionate. The oldest can become the auxiliary parent. She may tease her children, belittle or ridicule them. She may call them names just to, be funny, or just to, keep things lighthearted, but it's really hurting the kids' feelings. She could be more of a sibling or a friend than a parent. Sometimes she reveals too much about her life to her young children, and her young children don't need to hear that. So sometimes she doesn't know when to keep things to herself or keep things on an adult level, because again, it deals with that lack of filter. Again, with the mind games, she'll play mind games with her children. Sometimes she'll be biased. The dark side Gemini female mother does, well, the dark side Gemini mother does, she'll despise signs of weakness or neediness. And she could be abusive, especially mentally. The real dark-sided Gemini mother, a lot of times her kids are scattered around town or in different states, or she might have other adults playing surrogate parent roles for her. There's this movie that was made in the 90s called Serial Mom. Now that is a comedy, but that is, to me, the epitome of a dark-sided Gemini female to the extreme, or dark side Gemini mother to the extreme. If you ever seen that movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, check it out. You could probably order it on Amazon.com. But yeah, it's a hilarious movie, but it will show you that whole dual personality thing that they have with them, the whole angel devil thing. Now, in terms of sexuality, she can be a big time cheater and do it without a conscience, just like lying without a conscience. She will keep past lovers as friends and see no problem with it. She can be bisexual, pansexual, trisexual, have threesomes, foursomes, orgies. Basically, anything goes. Gemini as a sign in general is not very sexual when it comes to the physical act. However, they love to talk about it and they like to learn about it. So the dark-sided Gemini female will accumulate a shitload of sex partners just because she wants to learn about it or learn about different men or different styles. And it's all education to her, and she's taking notes, and she might be comparing one man to another. It might also be a notch in her belt, or it might be bragging rights. So this goes back to that whole masculine energy. Gemini is a masculine sign. So like how a lot of guys like to brag about the number of sex partners they had, well, a dark-sided Gemini female, she'll brag about the number of sex partners she has. She has a strong need for variety. And she loves to count the number of sex partners she's had. So don't be surprised if she has a list somewhere tucked away that just lists all the sex partners, and she might be rating them as well. Now, when she's not into you, she could be quite frigid and very insensitive. And she's the type that'll just be like, come on, like basically just bend over real quick and let him hit it real quick and then just, be about her business. So she could be very insensitive when she's really not into you and really frigid. Basically, there's no warmth. Um, and on the very extreme, the dark-sided Gemini female can engage in incest, or at least be prone to that, or be kissing cousins. Angelina Jolie is another, I'm using her as an example again, with her dark-sided ass. Basically, there's pictures, I'm putting it out right now, of her kissing her brother on more than one occasion, and kissing in a way that's, it looks incestuous. And I know she probably did it, to be shocking, or, to just create some type of scandal. Again, Gemini likes to, always keep things, crazy, and like to keep people guessing. But that was just really, like, that's not a good look. So basically, that's my take on the dark-sided Gemini female. If you feel that I left anything out, please feel free to contribute. Please like and subscribe. My next video in this dark-sided series will be about the dark-sided Cancer woman. So please stay tuned. Peace and blessings. I'm out.